Hello everybody, it's Fiona from Honouring ME Crochet and the Hooked on Crochet Club. Welcome to our Crochet Learning Corner and tonight's lesson, which is Lesson 5, the traditional Granny Square. So this lesson will give you a bit of an introduction to reading the pattern, as well as creating the Granny Square, which is one of the first things that most people end up making when they crochet. I'll just wait a few moments and see who turns up. So I have already uploaded a copy of this pattern in the group, so you might want to grab that, or you can get it later and follow again with the video. I also added it so it's there as a PDF file, and I've also uploaded it as images for those that couldn't download it on their phone. Okay, so I can see there's a few of you joined, so I'll get started. So this is the pattern. Now every pattern is written differently depending on who's writing it and their preference, I guess. So I'm just going to turn these legs around. I always write my patterns in both. Excellent, good to hear, Kate. I always write my patterns with both US and UK terms because I don't like to leave anybody out. I will give this lesson in US terms because that is my preference, but I will show you the pattern before we go and get started. So, and I put the pages out of order. Alright, so this is one that's come from the Hooked on Crochet Club. So in that, I always include an image. These aren't in my patterns that I sell on my site, but in the Crochet Clubhouse, I do have these images. So this is to help teach people what they will look like, what the stitches look like in a chart. So you've got your double crochet, which is this symbol, and you've got your chain. So these are the two stitches that we're going to be using to make a granny square. So hopefully you are confident with those stitches now. If not, then this may help make you a little bit more confident. Now I always include the terms as they will appear in the written pattern because we don't like to write out the full word the whole time, so we'll use the abbreviations. Trying to speak. And this is the chart that's included. So if you are used to crocheting and you want to learn to read a chart and read a pattern, then the granny square is a good place to start because you usually know how to make the granny square, and so you can team it back with the pattern and the chart to figure out how to read them. So the chart, when you're reading a chart, so you can see the symbols that we showed up the top here are in the image of the chart. So each little loop represents a chain. So in this case, we've got 4 chains. And then this is a round. So I've actually made them a different color so you can try and follow it in a different color. Every pattern will be different for a chart. So some may be all in one color, some may be alternating per rows like I've done. And if others are using multiple colors, then they may color code so that you know which color you're going with. So for this, you could say that these are alternating colors. Now, when you're reading a chart in the round, it's always going to go in the direction that you will crochet. And generally the number will be at the start of the round. So if you find the number, you can see that that's where the rounds start. Another hint is it usually starts with chains. So you can work the chains, where the chains are, and start from there. Okay, so for this pattern, so we start with a ring and then, not in the picture, sorry, is a little slip stitch. So that little black dot means slip stitch. So we're going to chain 4 and we're going to slip stitch to make it into a ring. And then we're going to chain 3 and we're going to work 2 double crochet. So these are all working into the ring like we did when we started the lesson for working in the rounds. We're going to work into the ring, not into the stitches. Where they're going to chain 3, do 3 more double crochet, chain 3, 3 double crochet, chain 3, and we're going to keep repeating that until we get back to the start, and we're going to do the chain 3 to finish and slip stitch. And then we're going to slip stitch across to the next corner. So these chain 3 spaces are going to equal our corners. And you can see as you move further out in the rounds, you get more. These have the corners, and on the sides we've got the single chain. the not lining up is just me trying to use software poorly. So apologies that it's not evenly lined up, but you get the idea. Now, if you're going to follow the written instructions, I write them out a lot differently to others as well. So all my more recent patterns, I include the instructions for making the stitch, because I found at my workshops that I host locally that some people didn't know the name of the stitch that they were doing, or they couldn't remember how to do it if they did know the name. So I always include the instructions in my more recent ones. If there are any special stitches, then there'll be instructions in that as well. And then if there's any notes, then there'll be notes in there. So the begin, so if you match it up with the chart, so the begin is chain 4 and slip stitch to form a ring. So you can see that we've got that there. And then the first round, so we're going to begin by doing a chain 3 and then work 2 double crochet into the ring. And the way I like to do this, to work my patterns, is quite often I'll have repeats along a side or in a round or a row. So I'll actually put that in bold. So you'll do the first step, so chain 3, 3 double crochet into the ring, and then repeat those steps 2 more times. Okay, and then I do that for each round. So that's just a brief introduction to reading patterns. So you can follow that along as we go, but for now I'm going to show you how to make the granny square, and it will follow along with that chart. So we're going to begin with the slip knot. Insert the hook. Now I'm using a finer yarn than what I have for previous lessons, mostly because I am making a bunch of granny squares every morning from this yarn, so it makes sense to make more of the same. So I'm going to chain 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then I'm going to slip stitch. So slip stitch, so I know we haven't covered that too much, but you just insert your hook, yarn over, and just pull that yarn through, and then just pull it through the loop that's on your hook so that you're making a ring. Okay, so to begin we're going to chain 3, and that chain 3 is going to count as a double crochet because it stands at the same height. Now you might notice that your ring, you'll need to keep hold of it a bit. It will twist around a little bit, which will make it difficult, and you can only just see the loop. So if I bring it closer, it's a little bit difficult to see the hole, but you'll find it and you'll insert your hook in. So remember, double crochet is yarn over, insert the hook, and we're going into the ring, not into the stitch. We're going to yarn over and pull up a loop, so we've got 3. Then we're going to yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So we're going to do that twice. If I just show you. Okay, and then that's going to be considered. So the 3 double crochet together, or in this case we've got the chain 3 and 2, that's the granny stitch. Okay, so now the corner is 3 chains, and then we're going to do 3 double crochet into that ring. You can see the ring starts to open up a bit more once you start putting stitches in, so it's a bit easier to find. Okay, so you do your double crochet. So if you're not comfortable with doing these stitches yet, then I urge you to keep practicing and get comfortable and familiar with what they are, because it'll make it easier to follow your pattern. Okay, so now that's another side. Then we're going to chain 3. And also note that I'm working over the tail as I go. That just makes it more secure and means I've got less to weave in at the end. So we're going to do 3 double crochet, and it's pretty easy to remember. I do find this quite a relaxing stitch as well. Okay, so you can see now we've got 1, 2, 3 sides and 2 corners. So I'll make another chain 3. So that's our 3rd corner. And then we're going to do 3 more double crochet. So if you are using UK terms, then it's a treble. Okay, so now we've got our 4 sides. 1, 2, 3, 4. We just got to make the last corner. Okay, and then we're going to slip stitch to the top of that chain 3. So we've got the chain 3 there, and you can see the little V at the top. So we're just going to insert into there. Okay, and then pull through and pull through. There we go, we've got the first round completed. Now we need to get our yarn over to this corner to start, so that's where we're going to slip stitch. So essentially you're going to work your way across like you did in the rounds. So where you see that little gap, we're going to insert our hook and slip stitch across, and you can see now that we're that little bit closer. And then I just like to do it into that space for the last one, and now you can see we're in that corner. So now we can start the next round. So if you look at your pattern, we match that little round in there. Okay, so that's how it's easier. Sometimes it's easier to follow a chart because you can picture it a bit better. Okay, so round 2, we're going to chain 3 to start, and then we're going to work 2 double crochet into that corner. Okay, and again, we're not working into the stitches, we're working into the space. So you can see that my stitches can move on that chain. I know when I first did my granny stitch, I didn't have someone explain that to me, and I've tried to work into the stitches. Okay, then we're going to chain 3 because it's a corner, and we're going to work another granny stitch, which is the 3 double crochet into that. Okay, so along our side, because this is our first side, we're going to do a chain 1 at the end of the granny stitch, and that's going to be a space that you can work into for the next round. So I put my hands where you can see them properly. Okay, so you can see we've got a corner there. So now we're going to do 2 granny stitches, so 3 double crochet, chain 3, 3 double crochet into that next corner space. Okay, 1, 2, 3, another 3. You can see it's pretty easy to remember as well as you go. Alright, so now we've got ourselves 2 corners. And we're going to do a chain 1 space because that's the side. And now we're going to work into the 3rd corner. So 3 double crochet, chain 3, 3 double crochet is the corner. And what you find is that just makes it get bigger. 1, 2, 3. So that's where the expansion's happening, is in the corners. Okay. You'll find it's much quicker and easier to work into chain spaces than it is into stitches. I think that's why else they become fun. See how cute they are. Then chain 1 on the side, and then the last corner, same again, 3 double crochet, chain 3, 3 double crochet. Now don't forget that I've been crocheting for a while, so my hook may move a little faster than yours does, and that's okay. That's why we practice. Okay, and then chain 1. Alright, so now we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 corners, each with 3 double crochet and a chain 3 in them, and the chain 1 space on the sides. Now we're going to slip stitch again to the top of that chain 3, which is just pull through, pull through. Okay, and now we've got to make our way to that corner space. So again, we just insert our hook into there and we're going to slip stitch across. So you can think of the slip stitch as being a travelling stitch. It's kind of your way to get from one place to another, and it's also your closing stitch to finish off a round. Alright, so now we're on round 3. So you can count the rounds because there's one set of granny stitch, there's another. You can count out from the corners, whatever works for you. So chain 3, then we're going to work 2 double crochet to start, and then we're going to chain 3, and then 3 double crochet. Okay, and because this is leading into our side, we're going to do a chain 1. And now we're going to work a granny stitch. We haven't done this yet on any of the sides, but this is our first working into a side, so we're going to use that chain space. So again, we're working into the space, not into the stitch. So you're going to yarn over and work your double crochet. And we're going to do 3 into that. So 3 double crochet. Okay, and then we're going to do our chain 1 space. And then we're going to do our next corner, which is the 3 double crochet, chain 3, 3 double crochet. So you can see how it gets quite repetitive, and that's where the meditative part comes into the crochet. You don't have to think so much, you just do. And you get a rhythm working in 3s, which is why else a lot of my patterns are the same, where there's a rhythm to the pattern. It's quite calming. Okay, so we've got our corner. Now we're going to chain 1, and we've got our next chain 1 space to work into. Okay. So this is just another way to work in around. So we chain 1 after that one, and then our corner, just 3 double crochet, chain 3, 3 double crochet. So again, if you're not familiar with the stitches, don't feel bad, just go back and read them and practice them until they're second nature to you, or at least more familiar. Okay, so there's our corner, so chain 1, and then we're going to do the 3 double crochet. Okay, and chain 1. So that's our next side. So this is our last corner now. So again, repeat after me. 3 double crochet, chain 3, 3 double crochet is your corner. Okay, chain 3. Then chain 1 at the end. Okay, so now we've got one more space to work into, and it's pretty easy to see where all the clusters are, or the groups of double crochet, so you can just pick the spot in the middle. Stitches just know what to do. Okay, and chain 1, and then slip stitch into that top of that chain 3, which is the little V right near that stitch. Okay, so now we've got 3 rounds. So you can see 1, 2, 3. You can count the corners instead. 1, 2, 3. Hi Giovanna. And if you look, it matches our pattern as well. Let me see if I can hold that up a bit. So hopefully you can see that those stitches match the picture. And we're working in the same direction. Alright, so this one has 5 rounds, so I'll keep going. So we're going to slip stitch across to the next corner. Let me just move that. Okay, now we're in the corner space, and chain 3, 2 double crochet to begin. So that chain 3, remember, counts as a double crochet stitch. Chain 3 for the corner, and 3 double crochet. So now this time we're going to have more along our side to work to. So this is why else it's a nice pattern to learn from, because you don't have to count and figure things out. As long as you keep track of where your corners are and where your sides are and work into those, then it'll just keep getting bigger. Okay, so we've got to do a chain 1. Okay, and then we're going to work into that chain space. So the last side had 1, this one's got 2. Okay, and chain 1, and then into that one, keeping track of our side. It doesn't take much to create new corners. I know I've done it when I've had making triangles, and I've created corners all over the place, not paying attention. All right, so chain 1, then into that corner again. Okay, so I'll go out to the entire 5 rounds so I can show you fastening off as well and weaving in the ends. So this one's an easy one. So much you can do with a granny square, especially if you're just first starting out and you're getting comfortable. You can make lots of squares and turn it into a blanket. You can turn them into bags, tops, purses, socks, all sorts of things with a granny square. So it's a good first thing to learn to get creative with. Okay, so each of these sides has 2 lots of granny stitch and a chain 1 between them. Alright, so we're on our 3rd corner. So hopefully you're picking up some of this. Don't worry if you can't follow along with me. You've got the opportunity to follow the video afterwards and pause and rewind and catch up and whatever else you need to do. Okay, so there's the corner. So you can start to see, hopefully you can picture that, try and get the shadows out. So that's our first corner. We've done the side, our next corner, a side, and our next corner. I used to think these were ugly, but I think it was more the colours that people kept making granny blankets and granny squares in, because I think they're quite pretty. Okay. So if you've got a sewing background, you can always use that to help you work out garments made of squares. And you can, this one's easy to adjust to any size blanket as well, because you just keep going until you've either got no yarn, no patience, or a blanket the size you want. As you can see, it's quite calming too. Okay, so don't forget the chain 1 when you come out of the corner. And if you do forget it, don't stress too much, because you can just work between those double crochet as well where they join. Some patterns don't expect you to put the chain 1 space. I like to, because it makes it neater when if you do the join as you go. Okay. Oh, it's getting caught. So there you are. We've now got, so if we count from the middle, we've got 1, 2, 3, 4 rounds. So I'm going to slip stitch again to the top of the chain 3. And again, we're matching our pattern. So you can see the first 4, and as we move out, if you wanted to count those, you can match them up as well. So our last round, we're going to slip stitch across just like we did with all the others. Okay, begin chain 3, 2 double crochet, chain 3 to make the corner, another one. If you do miss something, you can easily unravel it. I've even done that some mornings. I don't know what I'm doing sometimes. I just skip a corner. Okay, chain 1 and then into those. Sometimes we just get too comfortable. Chain 1, more granny squares. Okay. So same, you can see now I've got 3 across this side. So if we look at the sides, maybe if I do, I'll wait till I finished. You can see how the number of granny stitches increase. Okay, chain 1. Let me do this first half of the corner. So if it is looking wonky, you can just double check that you've got the right number of granny stitches on each side. 1, 2, 3. So if we look, you can see if we count the sides, so you've got 1 granny stitch in that one, then you've got 2, then you've got 3, then you've got 4, then the 5. So we increase each time. Okay. Then 3. Chain 1. So if you're stuck with me this long, that's good. You get to see how it finishes. Okay. Now don't worry if it takes you a long time to make your first one. That's totally understandable until you get comfortable with how you're holding the yarn and how you're moving your hook. It's going to take longer. Okay, so we've got the corner. 3. And then the corner. Okay. And then the chain 1, and then the 3 double crochet in that chain space. So again, you can make these any size that you want. So if you do want to keep increasing, then you don't need the pattern for the rest of it. Just know that you're working into the corner to increase and just working into each chain space along the side. It's a very repetitive pattern that way. Chain 1. Okay, and our last corner. So hopefully some of that is starting to sink in for you, but you've got the pattern that you can read and the chart to follow. And if you need any help, just give me a holler in the group or send me a message. Everyone's got their own comfort level, so if you're not comfortable posting in the group, by all means send me a message, email, whatever works for you. I'm here to help. Alright, so you can see we've got 2 more chain 1 spaces. That one's a bit of a dodgy chain space. Okay. Chain 1, last one, and then I'll show you fastening off as well so that you can finish. Okay, chain 1. Alright, so also I should mention way at the start, make sure you have a long enough tail that you can sew that in as well. Alright, so we're going to finish by doing a slip stitch. Okay, and then simply yarn over and pull through some of the yarn. And then just snip it off. So you've got enough to weave in, so that's probably around 10 centimeters. And then just keep pulling that through and it'll form a knot. Okay, so then you can see we've got the 2 tails. Now you do have the option of just crocheting them in. I'm in the habit now of sewing them in as I go. So it's as simple as putting the yarn on a hook, on a needle, and then just finding your way. So for the middle one, I tend to just push it through. If you can see, I'm working from the back, so I don't know if you can see the difference between, so that's the front. Generally your tail will be out the back, but you can see there's a little difference around this area. Looks, it's like an inside and outside garment. You can see everything's pushing, it's flatter on the front than it is on the back. These are more raised around here. Over time you'll be able to recognize that, but I just kind of weave that through It's not such a big deal for the middle one. Okay, and then the top one. Now to do it really well, you'll go in a few different directions. I'm a little bit lazy with mine. It all still holds. Oh, if I can thread a needle. Now if you don't have a needle, you can just do it, that's splitting. You can do it with your hook, it just takes a little bit more time, but you can just pull it through, and I do that sometimes. Oh, it did work. Okay, so for this one, I like to make that bump disappear. So, and there's no wrong way really of doing this, but I go back down through the back and just sort of pick your way through the loops that you see, and you want to just do the back loops so that it doesn't show out the front, and you can just weave anywhere that looks right to put your needle. So you can see I'm weaving through there, and you can't see it through the front. Sorry, put that where you can see. So you know that it's in the right spot, and just sort of pull it through. You can weave in through the stitches, back up, just wherever it goes. I don't go too far. There. So if you did want to do it with your hook, you kind of just would put your hook through part of like the back loop. It's a bit trickier. Where am I? Back loop of a stitch, and would then just pull the yarn through. It's much easier to have a needle though. Alright, so once you've woven them in, you just snip it close, not too close, because you'll find it will weave itself in as you start to do stuff. Okay, and you don't want to accidentally snip the yarn. And there we've got our little granny square. Looks rather cute, and you can see hopefully that it matches, well, it's different size obviously, but you can match the stitches with the chart. So you can hopefully see how that works going around. So that's the granny square. So tomorrow we're going to cover making a coaster, and I'm going to make the coaster in rows with a border, just to introduce you with the border, and I'll be doing it in probably half double crochet, because that's one of my favorite stitches, and it'll be a nice just basic coaster that you can then use anywhere, make any size. Yeah, so if you got any questions, get stuck at any time, message me, post in the group. I'll put a post up as well to have you show your granny squares. I'd love to see how well you go with making one. Just stick with it. If you're having any trouble, even if you're still with lesson 1 practicing your chain, that's okay. We all move at our own pace, and we've all got different schedules. Alright, so that's it for tonight. Thank you for joining me, and happy granny square making. Good night all.